everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you. My name is Chrissi Kelly. I am the founder of AbScent. And this evening we are trying out an Insta Live. And as you can see, my guest down there is Simon Gane, AbScent trustee and ENT, and more particularly a rhinologist. So anyway, it's lovely to have everyone with us. If you are just stumbling across this Insta Live, I would welcome you to abscent.org, which is our website. You can find out all about us. We're all over the place. We've got a couple of Facebook groups. We have got the AbScent Network, which is a much smaller community and much more personal. We have smaller discussion groups. Lots going on there. That's also where we have our sort of research channel. So if you're interested in participating in research and want to learn more about what we're doing with other research institutions, then do join us in the AbScent Network. A couple of things. So I'm waving to all of you who are waving at me. That's very nice. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. We are going to be doing a Christmas quiz at AbScent next Tuesday. So if you're interested in joining us, there are a couple of very interesting prizes, including a 1 hour free session with me. So if that interests you, we'd love to have you come along and we'll test your trivia knowledge. Right, so Simon, it's lovely to see you again. Our paths are crossing less and less with your busy schedule in mind. So it's nice to have you back.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And now I'm going to let you get a word in edgewise.
It'll be a novel sensation. We're starting this a little bit early, so we were going to go live at 8:30, weren't we?
That's right.
So we can just hang around for a bit until we hit that thing. But I don't think any of our paths are going to be crossing anytime soon, by the looks of things. Looks like Omicron might have designs on our Christmas, no matter what the PM has to say about it.
Yes, I know. It's not good news.
No.
And I'm, of course, everybody is wondering whether or not the Omicron variant is going to end up affecting people's taste and smell. And I'm keeping an eye on that on our various platforms, and so far have not spoken to anyone for whom this seems to be the case. But I think it's probably fair to say, Simon, you can tell us more about this, whether or not the variants are routinely tested when you have a PCR.
They wouldn't tell you, no. So you wouldn't know. The things that might give somebody a clue would be that they get reinfected. That it looks like if you had COVID before, Delta variant or one of the earlier variants, that is not as protective as we might hope. So if you get COVID again, that might be a sign that it's Omicron, but they wouldn't necessarily test or tell you what your variant is. But I think if thinking back to almost 2 years ago now, when we first started seeing the membership of AbScent start to just slowly, and then very quickly start to climb, if we see that same kind of thing now, then we might see the same, we might infer from that it is the new variant that's giving us the problem.
Yep, that's right. So yes, that remains.
I hope not.
Remains to be seen. Yeah, and I think I don't know really whether or not we can expect. I don't know. I suppose people losing their sense of smell. It's always going to be, an unknown thing, whether it's going to be a quick recovery or a longer term recovery. And I think we don't really know enough to say with the later cases, it's less severe than it was in the beginning. I mean, that story hasn't been written yet.
No, really not. I'm still seeing people who are coming across AbScent or me or one of my colleagues for the first time after losing that. I mean, I had a patient this week who lost their sense of smell in February 2020, and they were smell training. What's that?
Really? So
how can we get to this point?
Yes.
So we've still got work to do.
Yeah. So as long as there are people who have not yet heard about what we're doing and how people can help themselves with smell training, we'll just keep repeating ourselves.
Yeah, got to work harder, Chrissy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Even
like
harder.
As if that was even possible.
No, not the way you do it. It might be possible for me, but not for you.
Oh, I don't know. I think actually you work harder. You have to wear you've got to wear the PPE.
That's true. That's true. I'm getting very, very tired of that. But I think the PPE might be here to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's now 8:30. So I'll introduce myself again. I'm Chrissi Kelly, the founder of AbScent. And this evening, I'm going to be talking with ENT and rhinologist Simon Gane, who's also our trustee. Simon and I started doing Facebook Lives, well, years ago now, long before any of this ever happened. It was the two of us sitting in your clinic after work, answering questions. And in those days, of course, we answered different kinds of questions. Nowadays, questions are almost exclusively about post-viral or post-infectious olfactory loss. So things have changed a bit, but we hope we're still roughly the same. So I think it's time to start with those questions. If you've got a question for us and you are listening in, do please put it, I know there's a little button there. I can see it with a question mark on it. So if you've got a question, put it there. In the meantime, I'm going to start with a couple of other questions that I've picked up through our other social media platforms. So the first question came yesterday. Someone who has had smell loss now for 18 months. They happen to be asymptomatic. Taste is okay, so salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. That's absolutely fine. The other sort of flavors, if you like, are spotty, sometimes available, sometimes not. So this person is asking about the usefulness of vitamin A and zinc. And in other regards, after 18 months, Simon, what do you think is the prognosis?
So that's three questions in one for the first. Yep. Okay. We also ought to always start with the fact that we cannot give advice on specific cases. This isn't medical advice. This is a general approach to the issues raised by certain people's questions, but it can't be, unfortunately, my medical advice to them as a patient. That would be a dereliction of my duty as a doctor. But given those things, given that, let's take those in turn. So vitamin A first. Yeah. There's some basic science research that suggests that vitamin A might work as a molecule which turns on the regeneration in the nose. So in all normal noses, the lining of the nose, the olfactory mucosa, the bit that does the smelling, is filled with nerves, and these have smell receptors on them. And those smell receptors are what does the smelling. They recognize the molecules and report to the brain what they're recognizing. And they die off all the time in normal, they're in what is to nerves a very hostile environment. The outside world is quite bad for nerves. Most nerves are happily ensconced inside your skull or your spinal cord. But these ones are in the real world, as it were. And so they're dying all the time. But they're being replaced by by nerves that come from stem cells within the lining of the nose. And it looks like that vitamin A might work as a signal to those nerves that they need to work harder to make more olfactory sensory neurons, so to make more nerves to regenerate better. That's only basic science, and one of the challenges with medicine in general is that you can find something in a test tube that works fantastically, but when you give it to a patient, it doesn't work for a whole host of reasons. So you have to test that. One test of this was done several years ago, looking at just giving people vitamin A tablets, and it pretty much didn't make any difference to the sense of smell. But we think that if you directly put the vitamin A into the nose, that would work. My friend and colleague Carl Philpott in the University of East Anglia in Norfolk is running a test looking at exactly this. He's running a trial looking at this. We had hoped to do it more widely, but the pandemic came along, so he was trying to do this beforehand. But there hopefully he will be the first one to show that it does work. But in the meantime, we can get vitamin A. It's safe. It's been used over the counter for ages in Germanic countries, Austria and Germany. Why not put it in your nose? It's not going to do any damage, probably, or most likely. So you might as well try. And that's hence the.
And can I just interject that the formula that is available from these countries in Germany. So there are two products with very similar names. One is Coldestop, the other one is Coldestop. If you go onto the abscent.org website, we have a page there with all the information about vitamin A. So Simon, you keep talking, and I'm going to find out where that is, and I'll see if I can put it into the feed.
Yeah, that's very useful, because the problem with getting things from Germany is all the instructions are in German. But luckily, we have somebody who speaks German.
That's right. And
for now,
if you need a translation of the instructions that come along with Coldestop or Coldestop, you can get them from us. Now, let me see. I'll find. I won't waste time looking for that link right now, but I will put it on Insta when we're finished with this live broadcast.
So that's vitamin A. Might as well take it. Don't take it for that long. I think we recommend about a month. There's no science. We don't know. Maybe it's 2 months. We don't know. But at some point you have to stop.
And I know that I did ask Professor Hummel about this idea of buying these sort of little gel capsules of vitamin A. And I had heard someone say that they use these capsules, they cut them open and they squeeze them into their nose. And he said, oh, I wouldn't do that. That's too strong. So I think, as always, you have to exercise caution with what you're putting into your nose. Simon, as you've said to me before, if you wouldn't put it into your eye, don't put it into your nose. and so I want to caution anyone against doing that. I did have someone come to me and say they tried that, and it's very, very painful. And I always think that's a sign that you shouldn't be doing it. So
usually, yes. Yeah.
So these Coldestop drops are made especially for noses. So I would never have any concern there. And Professor Hummel certainly doesn't have any concern either with those. So available online, all the information that you need, you can find in a link that I'm going to put at the bottom of this Instagram live event. Yeah. Right. So
what was the next one? Zinc.
The next one was zinc.
Zinc. So zinc has been implicated in the function of olfactory sensory neuron, olfactory receptors. So it looks like some of them need to have a metal ion in the receptor to work properly. And we've known for a while that zinc deficiency is associated with anosmia or smell loss. So it makes sense to top up zinc. If you have a subclinical, a sort of very low but not really severe zinc deficiency, that may be one of the things that's holding your sense of smell back, is that you're not getting enough zinc. So it makes sense to top it up. I don't, you can do zinc replacement for people, that is a possibility, but normally I just recommend that my patients take multivitamin that contains zinc. It's a relatively safe thing to replace. One thing I wanted to say about vitamin A, it is possible to overdose on vitamin A. Yeah. Vitamin A, D, E, and K are fat soluble, and they can overwhelm the body's ability to process them. So you have to try very hard, but it is possible. So stick to the recommended dosage and stick to the stuff that you're allowed to put in your nose or should put in your nose. So zinc, I mean, to be honest, we don't know, but it's unlikely that people who suddenly lose their sense of smell because they got COVID or an upper respiratory tract infection, it's unlikely that zinc's going to have a problem, going to be the cause there. But you might as well just make sure that everything's working as well as you can to maximize your chance of responding. Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, I don't think that any of these things by themselves are going to cure, are really going to solve your problem. I mean, that same thing goes for alpha lipoic acid. I mean, it may help a bit. I think, the jury's still out on that one. But with these things, it's like saying, if you zipped up your down parka, you'd be warmer in a blizzard. So yeah, a little warmer, but it's not going to, like, you know, save you from frostbite if you have to stand outside for, 24 hours. So
Yeah.
I think these things are good. It's good to sort of optimize whatever it is that you can do, and that's what I agree with you on that. I mean, zinc and alpha lipoic acid and vitamin A. I've used all of those myself.
Yeah.
Many of you that are in the audience will know that I've lost my sense of smell a couple of times.
You're getting good at it. It's
I'm
becoming a
good at
habit.
it, yeah, but I keep bouncing back. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm astonished, actually, because I sort of
Really?
thought that it would eventually, you know, that this last case of COVID would have really knocked it out permanently, but that's not the case. I'm very, very happy to report.
Fantastic.
Right. So,
sorry, just to say, and the last thing is that I've heard this kind of approach called Pascal's treatment regime. So from Pascal's wager. So Blaise Pascal was a philosopher who said, why not believe in God? Because even on the sort of 0.001% chance that you might be right, you'll get into heaven, and all the other times you'll be wrong and you'll be dead, and it doesn't matter.
right.
So the same thing is, yes, do things that are safe, and that might work, because you never know.
Yeah.
There's a diminishing return on how many things you can put into your nose, though.
Right.
So we talk about other things that actually we think do work.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So and the last thing is, how long is too long? Is 18 months too long? We would really hope to see some recovery by 18 months. That is a much more positive sign. Obviously, people who get to 18 months and are coming to see me or coming to see you or coming to AbScent are desperate to get their sense of smell back. But it's not too late. And I think, Chrissi, you've got a couple of stories from AbScent that
Yep.
show that it can go a lot longer than that.
We've had a couple of people come into the group to say it's been 20 months and they're recovering.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, in one case they said they had recovered. So I do think that's really positive. I still think that we are within, you know, we don't yet know how many people will recover from it, people who are in this 10% of the long recovery group. It's still too early to say whether or not those people, how long it will take for them to recover, because I mean, in my own case, the first time I lost my sense of smell, it was 2 full years before I felt as though my sense of smell was in any way functional. And I also would like to make a comment about the way people perceive their ongoing smell loss. You know, the recovery is so slow that oftentimes people do not recognize that they're actually recovering. And I know that doesn't sound likely. And I mean, even for myself, I'm smell training right now. I had my most recent loss of smell was a couple of months ago, and it was complete. So I had a sniff and sticks test. Didn't score very well, but as I continue to smell train, and I do quite complicated smell training exercises, so not what you see in the smell training videos and things, but things that I sort of am devising myself, and I'm astonished at how the result that I see does not match up with what I think is going on in my own nose and head. So I would encourage all of you who think that in 18 months you've had no recovery to, I mean, I know it's impossible to remember what was going on with your sense of smell a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. But if you keep a diary, if you keep careful track, or if there are things that, you know, experiences that you can look back on and think, you know, I wasn't able to smell that, but actually today I'm noticing something. Believe me, these are really important changes. So, you know, give it time. And also, if by really paying attention, and whether that's keeping a diary or just being more mindful about what you smell, I think you will find that you're perhaps having some kind of recovery that you're not noticing.
Yeah, ideally we'd be able to offer smell tests to everybody because you can see that change. That's how we demonstrate that smell training works in the first place, but
Right.
not always easy. But I
No.
mean, people can test themselves. I mean, you know, even I have had patients tell me, oh, they can, you know, they started off they could smell one of the four of the Hummel 4 smell training, and now they can smell all of them. And they oddly say, oh, and I'm not that much better. I'm like, you're 100% better. You're 400% better. And those are, I bet, are not the only smells you can smell. But it's just the same conundrum around smell and its presence within human consciousness and the amount of access that our conscious mind has to the sensations that we smell.
Right.
That makes that a challenge, I think.
And I think for people that have never really given their sense of smell much thought, it seems like a relatively simple thing. You know, you put your nose to something and then you understand what it is. But actually, what's happening in the brain is a very complex cascade of processes. And when something goes wrong, you know, we don't really know exactly what's happening in the way we process these recovering smells. So let's give that a time. Let's give that some time to, you know, for us to learn more, and we will be bringing you that information as soon as we have it. I see some people are posting questions now. Just make sure that, okay, right. Okay, I see some questions in the feed. I quickly want to answer the questions that were given to me on other platforms yesterday. And that was, someone was asking a question about Phantosmia. So can we quickly discuss that and whether there are any known treatments for Phantosmia? Simon, what do you reckon?
So, well, we should start with the definition. So we talk about smell loss a lot, or post olfactory smell loss, but there are actually two dimensions to the sense of smell. One is just, can I smell it or can I not? And it's sort of you can imagine that just on one dimension. And then the other is slightly orthogonal to that, which is the quality of those smells. And these are what we call the olfactory dysfunctions. Chrissi invented or named one of them. The classical ones are Parosmia and Phantosmia. And then Chrissi, I think, really the first description of what we've come to call olfactory perseveration or smell locks came from our work with the AbScent groups.
Yeah.
So just to differentiate between those. So Phantosmia, so let's start with Parosmia. Parosmia is a distorted and unpleasant distortion of certain smells. It acts in the same way as if you smell that. Typically, coffee is one of the most common. You smell coffee, it doesn't smell like it used to. It smells disgusting. It lasts for about the same time as the coffee smell used to last to, and it doesn't stick around after that. Phantosmia is something that, again, it's often described as disgusting, altered sensation. People use all sorts of signifiers, often burnt, smoky, sewage. What are the other ones? But if you ask them this, people will often say, well, it doesn't quite smell like that. It's just the nearest thing that I can get to describe how foul this is to me. And it lasts for a long time. It hangs around for hours or days sometimes. And it doesn't tend to be triggered. So it doesn't tend to be a response to anything. It's just there all the time in the background. And then the final one is a sort of combination of those two, which is what Chrissi called the smell locks. I'll let you describe smell locks, Chrissi, since it's your baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that I had experienced myself, but then I saw people talking about it on the platforms. And that led me to sort of think about the best way to describe it, and also thinking about what might be happening. If we imagine that Parosmia is this unpleasant smell, and Phantosmia is a sort of phantom smell. I want you to keep those two thoughts there, and then think about what happens. And I'm sure there are people who are listening right now who've experienced this, where they will smell something, and it's very often seems to be household cleaning products, laundry detergent, things like that, washing up liquid. They'll smell that and then they can't unsmell it. Then it's with them for hours and hours and hours, and it's in the background. Now, what you will have noticed is that the first time that they experience it, they have a triggered response. So suddenly they're smelling this thing that is really foul to them, but then it persists and persists and persists. And then it starts to take on the definition of phantosmia, which is something that happens without, without any obvious trigger. It seems to be sort of in the background. And it looks like these two things are converging. And we still don't understand why that is. I know there are people who suggest that things like using a Vicks inhaler stick or chewing gum, cinnamon gum, that there are certain things that you can do that seem to sort of flush out that experience, and it can make it stop. But those smell locks, they're a bit like having an earworm. You hear a song, and then you've got that song playing in your head all day and all night. So, the person that asked this question earlier was wondering about phantosmia and whether there's anything that we can do to stop that experience. So I've just mentioned two sort of easy interventions that you might try just at home. But I know that Thomas Hummel has recently published a paper on sodium citrate spray.
Is it published now?
Pardon?
I didn't know he got it published.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so that paper showed that people, so what they did is there's something called sodium citrate. And Simon, I'll let you explain what goes on when people use sodium citrate. But the end effect of this paper was that sodium citrate seems to help people who have parosmia. So Simon, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what sodium citrate is and if you have any idea why it might be working.
So sodium citrate or citric acid is the easiest way of thinking about it is those nerves that I was talking about that are doing the detecting of the smells in the nose. What happens is the receptor binds to the molecule it's detecting, and it switches on, and then it switches on the whole nerve, and that switch on of the nerve sends a signal to the brain to do the rest of the complex processing that Chrissi was talking about. And sodium citrate essentially makes the nerve more twitchy. It makes it more easy to switch on. It might not need as many receptors to switch on the whole nerve. And so because it makes them twitchy, you're more likely to detect things. It makes your nose more sensitive. And we use this actually for people with smell training. I think, Chrissi, you might want to speak to your experience with that. Because it makes the nose basically easier, more sensitive, easier to detect certain smells. And it may be, we think that because you can detect other molecules, that they may be masking or drowning out the parosmia molecules that are sort of what we talk about as the trumpet blaring in the orchestra. If the rest of the orchestra tunes up as well, then the trumpet isn't so strident and isn't so loud. It sort of is
right. So so of course the feed here is lighting up with sodium citrate. Where do we get it? And
any pharmacy.
Yeah, well, this is the problem, that because these are new therapies, they're not available commercially, and you could look up the recipe and make your own, but that's not something that we can recommend because there are ethical considerations, with that. Sodium citrate can be easily obtained. You can buy it. It's used for all kinds of things.
It's used for jams and wines and all sorts of things.
Exactly, exactly.
Available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's please. Camp Curiosity is wondering whether you sniff it into your nose. Oh no.
No.
Oh no! Please no! Don't do that. That would be a fast way.
I think you'd only ever do that once.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any sense of smell.
Yeah, it's pretty stingy even when dilute. So
this is the sodium citrate spray used in this study is an extremely dilute solution, and it was used as nose drops using the Kaiteki maneuver. So it's the same problem that we have with the vitamin A nose drops. Luckily, they're made by a company in Germany, but even that is not really very helpful for the people all over the world that would love to have them, and the postage costs are prohibitive. So sodium.
Well, I think I can say that the concentration of the drops used in the study were about equal to half a teaspoon, 2.5 mils of sodium citrate crystals, dissolved in 10 mils of normal saline, which all of those things are easy.
10 mils, Simon, or 100 mils?
I'm pretty sure it's 10, but we can check. Okay, don't listen to me. We'll check it.
Don't listen to Simon. When the time comes that we feel we can give you a recipe to use, and for those of you who grew up with the Waltons, you will remember the recipe.
No one grew up with the Waltons, Chrissi.
Sorry, I'm just so old.
Dating yourself already.
Yeah. So if when the time comes, please come to the AbScent.org website and look for some information about sodium citrate. Great, Camp Curiosity. I'm so glad you were only joking. Okay, so that's great. Right, now let's see. We started off talking about Phantosmia. Can it be treated? The answer is we think so, with sodium citrate sprays or drops. You'll learn more about that on the AbScent.org website in time.
Chrissi, I mean, there's a whole sort of range of things that you can do. I mean, we have very good sort of advice for people who are dealing for the first time with parosmia. All the things about nose pegs. You talked about the spray, citrate acetate, first bite, worst bite. The fact that it is going to get better almost certainly, and is a predictor of recovery. So parosmia happens in the recovering nose. So it's a good sign, even though it may not feel like it when you first get it.
I know. Yeah, absolutely right. And, for all of these things, we've got tons of support for you on the AbScent.org website. We've got videos. We've got the Nosewell section, which Simon and I put together with the British Rhinological Society as a sort of first aid kit for anybody who had lost their sense of smell from COVID. So if you are just new to this problem of smell loss, please go to AbScent.org, and the best thing you can do is start with Nosewell. That's on the far left-hand corner. There's a little sort of doctor's bag. Take a look at that, and we've got all kinds of information on managing parosmia, what to do about the food. As Simon, as you were just saying, when it's really severe, which it can become, using a nose clip, how to, as you improve, to start pushing through when you're eating something, so that, you just push yourself a little bit, and that seems to help. We don't have scientific evidence for that yet. We're not there yet, but hopefully we will soon.
What do you think about smell training in parosmia?
I don't know. I just don't have an answer to that. And I've been there. I've had parosmia. I've been smell training now for years. I just don't know the answer. But what I do know is that when I hear people say, I just give up, I don't care anymore, I'm not doing anything, I'm not smell training, I always think that's a bit of a shame. I think it's really important to be proactive and to pay attention to your sense of smell. I do think that people who switch off from their sense of smell because they are so distressed about their smell loss, and they are so disheartened, that those people tend to not see the recovery when it happens. And for that reason, it's really important. It's important to remain kind of tuned into your sense of smell and not just disregard it. So you've asked me a question I can't answer. Does smell training help parosmia? I wish I had a 5p for every time I was asked that question. I just don't know.
I'll give you 5p. Okay, but your experience with coffee is actually one of the things that I think supports a cautious recommendation. So smell training, you should do smell training because it makes your sense of smell better. That's it. should you train with parosmic compounds? Should you force yourself to practice with coffee? I think that the answer is going to be probably yes. And one of the things that makes me say that, besides having an understanding of the underlying anatomy and physiology, is the fact that Chrissi did it because she can't stop drinking coffee. And
Yeah.
drinks coffee.
Yeah.
And you told me your parosmia improved.
It did. I mean, my parosmia dissolved, really is the best way of putting it. And, you know, it was sort of 8 years of recovery before I got COVID the first time. And in that time, when I reached the height of my recovery, I would say there were 1 or 2 things that never came quite right again. But everything else felt satisfying. I felt like I had a full quality of life. I felt as though I could read the environment. I could read people. Yeah. I could really engage with my food. I could engage with wine. Everything felt really good. And so I think that is something that people should, you know, bear that in mind. I know it feels bleak, especially if you've got bad parosmia. I saw one person on one of the platforms said, the parosmia is so bad, I'd like to have my olfactory nerves cauterized.
I mean, that has been described.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don Leopold.
Yeah. And I want to just say, oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Because when it comes back, it's so joyful. And, you know, as you said, for those who have parosmia, just remember that this is a sign that things are recovering, that things are regenerating, and it's a good sign. And I know it's horrible while it's happening, but yeah, you just have to accept it and keep going forward. And you know, as far as the coffee is concerned, yeah, it was really bad. I mean, it felt as bad as having morning sickness and not being able to be around coffee. And then, you know, I just started drinking it really weak and with a lot of milk, and eventually got to the point where I'm now back to drinking it black, and I enjoy it. So yeah, that's what I would recommend to all of you, and also want to, you know, reassure you and let you know that, you know, you're not alone in this, that so many people are feeling the same thing. Yeah. Right. We've got lots of questions, Simon, and I'm going to start at the bottom. Okay. Hamza asked, is there any development in parosmia? Developments, well, we're working very hard on parosmia right now. And there is nothing really new, except that we know that it's a sign of recovery, and that the people who suffer from it or suffer with it the most seem to be young women. That doesn't really help anyone, but as far as mechanisms go, we've got papers that are ready to be published on that, and we will bring you more information about that as soon as we have it. So Sarah asked about whether or not COVID smells can be treated. She's got an ashtray-like smell, comes and goes. That sounds to me like Phantosmia, Sarah, and we've discussed sodium citrate. And you can also try things like cinnamon chewing gum or Vicks inhaler.
Not the decongestant. The little bullet thing.
Yes, let's have a, wait, what did you say about a bullet thing?
So in this country, it comes in a little sort of bullet-shaped inhaler, it's a mainly sort of mentholy eucalyptus, minty smelling thing with a lot of trigeminal activation. Yeah, is probably the way it works. Yeah, but not the decongestant nasal spray, which Vicks also make. Right. So let's just do our regular public service announcement about decongestants. About being very careful with decongestants. So if you're in the UK, we're talking about things like Otrivin. You can look at the chemicals that are in that nasal spray and compare, because I know
all the supermarkets, they've got their own brands. So just
the
be
ones
very
that
careful.
end in metazoline, so oxy or xylometazoline are the ones you want to avoid.
Right. And Simon, give us one of those beautiful descriptions about what happens to your olfactory mucosa or your
All mucosa.
all of it, all mucosa when you spray that stuff on it.
So, I mean, it does have, I use it for my patients sometimes. It does have utility. If your nose is blocked from a cold and you can't get to sleep, using that spray in your nose to open it up for 1 or 2 or 3 nights is probably fine. The problem is if your nose is blocked because you have a bed septum or you have polyps or something else like that, putting this spray into your nose, the way these metazolines work is they shut down the blood vessels. And they shut them down hard for 12 hours. And the blood vessels are the body's way of getting food and oxygen to the tissue. So the tissue, which is being starved now for 12 hours, is shouting, chemically shouting at the blood vessels, say open, say open, say open, I need more food, I need more oxygen. And so when the decongestant wears off, the blood vessels slam open. And then, of course, your nose blocks. So what do most people do after a while? They put some more in. Oh, fantastic. Opens the nose up again, shuts down the blood vessels. And then you get into this dance of opening and shutting, opening and shutting. Eventually, the blood vessels just get so tired of this that they stop listening to the chemical shouting and they just stay open all the time. And you get something called rhinitis medicamentosa. It's slightly more complex than that, and it's slightly more ugly than that when you look into the nose, because it's dry, it's crusty, there's not a lot of mucus around, the nose doesn't clean itself very well, and it's very horrible and very difficult to treat. The other problem is that your nose is supposed to be slightly difficult to breathe through. You're supposed to have a slight bit of resistance because the nose is filtering and warming the air that is going through it. So you need to pull through it. And we see sometimes when we use a tracheostomy to help somebody breathe, if they have a problem sort of further up, you put a hole in the front of the neck to be able to breathe through the front of the neck into the lungs. And sometimes when it comes to take that out and to start them breathing through the mouth and nose again, people really struggle because they're used to breathing through this massive hole in the front of their neck with no resistance, and their lungs are weak and flabby. They haven't been working hard to draw air through the nose. So if you artificially shrink the inside of your nose, you get a false sense of how open your nose is supposed to be, which is what these decongestants do. So they work in 2 ways to really make things worse in the long term. So the message is you can use them, just be careful, try to limit them to a few nights, really to help getting to sleep, not during the day and things like that.
Right. Thank you for that. Where were we when we started talking about nasal sprays?
Oh, we were talking about using Vicks as cinnamon chewing gum.
Yes. Thank you. Short-term memory problem.
Usually me doing that.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so we've now covered that topic. We had another question here. Someone asked whether or not allergies act as a hindrance in trying to recover from COVID-19 smell loss.
So I'd say they probably do. Allergies themselves can give you smell loss. They work in a number of ways to give you smell loss. The first way is that just having a blocked nose means that you can't draw the air in with the olfactory molecules in, so they don't get to the bit of your nose that does the smelling, and you can't smell. Anybody who's had a bad cold or with a bit of hay fever in hay fever season knows that their sense of smell goes down. But also the inflammation in the nose after triggered by the allergy can itself stop there's certain chemicals that are released in the inflammatory cascade. They can themselves interfere with the sense of smell and stop it from working. So even when the nose is relatively open, you're actually able to get air in. These things are still attacking the olfactory mucosa, damaging it and stopping it from working. So yes, definitely, they are their own source of smell loss. And if you've got smell loss for 2 reasons, well, that's double the problem, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So yeah, get your allergies treated. It's much easier than treating post-COVID smell loss.
Okay, and Simon, while we're on that subject, we've got a question here from Camp Curiosity, who asks, "Are you able to explain why within 24 hours of taking prednisolone, I can smell and taste, but without it, I can't smell anything, even if coffee was put up my nose or I was breathing in fire, etc. I've been diagnosed with pan sinus disease post-COVID too.
Yeah, so I think if you get better with prednisolone, then that's not COVID. It might be on top of COVID, post-viral olfactory dysfunction from COVID, but prednisolone is a steroid, and steroids work in a number of ways to just suppress inflammation in the nose. So a lot of the disease that we see in the nose that's not caused by a virus or a bacterium is caused by inflammation from the body essentially attacking itself, excuse me, an autoimmune disease. We're starting to understand this more. So allergy is a form of this, in that the body mounts a defense as if it's being infected by things that are just in the environment. So it sees grass pollen as a sign that it's being infected, and so it mounts the same response as it would to a cold virus. So that's why you feel like you have a cold. You just have a cold all the time. Mm. So that inflammation can be suppressed by the steroids. And one of the things that inflammation does is using swelling, causes swelling, sorry, and we talked about the problems with that. So if you open the nose up with prednisolone, with these high-dose oral steroids that go around the body and suppress the inflammation, then no wonder your sense of smell gets better, if that's the problem. The sense of smell loss from COVID shouldn't improve with steroids. There may be a role for steroids early on to prevent sort of inflammatory damage. I was much more in favor of using them in the early stages of the pandemic. Now that we understand a bit more about how this virus attacks the sense of smell, I think they're probably not as useful. But yes, if you respond to steroids, then you need a better treatment of your inflammatory disease, and you need to go and see somebody who understands that polyps aren't just pieces of meat in your nose, but are actually autoimmune factories pumping out these inflammatory mediators that damage the sense of smell, both in terms of blocking, but also in terms of direct inflammatory effects on the lining of the nose.
While we're talking about prednisolone, someone said that they did not tolerate it well. So are there alternatives?
I mean, there are alternatives to this specific steroid, prednisolone, dexamethasone or others, but they're all steroids. And if they give you heart palpitations, one gives you heart palpitations, it's likely that the others do. In this country, you can get a high-dose steroid drop called betamethasone nasal drop that you can use in the nose, that's roughly equivalent, a couple of drops each side, roughly equivalent to taking 1 milligram of prednisolone. And this is something we usually prescribe at sort of 30-40 milligrams. But it works because it's such a high dose in the nose. Again, it has the same problems as taking systemic prednisolone. You shouldn't take it for longer than two weeks mostly. It can stop your body making its own steroid. But if you have palpitations and you can get drops into your nose, that's a good option.
Yeah. And of course, Simon, we talk about this all the time, use of nose drops, and use of nasal sprays for that matter.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there who could be doing a better job of getting these products into their noses by optimizing the way they deliver them.
Yeah, if only there was like a program, like a series of videos that were made in the beginning of the pandemic. Maybe, of people how to do this. Yeah. Do you think we could put them on a website and make some clever pun about the AbScent or something, and then and then you could call it something like a well nose, something like that, and that would show people exactly how to use these things. And the more the better. But you're absolutely right that most people think this is your nose, but actually, if you look at it, I don't have my skull here, otherwise I could show you. But the nose goes all the way back to the middle of the ear, and it's about this shaped in the middle between your eyes. And your sinuses are here, frontal sinuses are there. So it's much bigger than most people think. And so sticking your spray up just straight up into the nose is not going to do anything. You need to get it into the soft and meaty bits inside. And that's why we have those videos showing, I think showing me how to did I have to do the nose drop?
I'm sorry to
I blanked it from my memory.
you modeled nasal rinsing.
Oh no, the nasal rinse. Yeah.
And you also modeled the use of nasal sprays.
Yeah.
And it was our lovely videographer who modeled the Kaiteki maneuver for putting nose drops in.
So hang on. So which one did you do?
I'm afraid I didn't do it.
Jeez, I got done there.
So if you're interested in learning how to use nose drops and nasal sprays better, go to the AbScent.org website and find the Nosewell section. You'll find it across the top of the top bar on the extreme left. Nosewell should be easy to find, and Nosewell has got just 6 buttons on it once you get to that page, and one of them shows advice, and that's where you'll find all the videos. So no more guesswork on using nasal sprays or using nose drops. A lot of people are used to putting nose drops in either with their head hanging off the bed or kneeling down on the floor and putting the top of the head flat on the floor. Yeah. And neither of those positions are really optimal. You're trying to get the nose drops to trickle back and really hit the, hit the most important spot, which is the high point in the upper airway. And yeah, you can do that using the Kaiteki maneuver. So do check that out on the website. Okay, lots more questions. Now, I know for those of you who are sort of coming in on Instagram and leaving little comments, I may not be seeing them. So if you've got a question, make sure you're putting it into the question button. Right. Is there not any surgery being looked at for post-COVID anosmia? Not right now, Camp Curiosity, but if that changes, we'll make sure we let you know. Okay, so Liam wants to know if there's any benefit to using saline nose spray. ENT advised me this week to help keep it clean. Well, funny you should bring that up because we were just talking about nasal rinsing. And I'm a big fan of nasal rinsing. I think it's useful for a lot of reasons. I do talk about it quite a bit on my other platforms. And Simon, as a doctor, why do you think this is important?
So noses are pretty clever. They normally keep themselves clean, and they mostly keep themselves clean by a process of sort of sweeping, making mucus, trapping the gunk that they're breathing in, the filtering I was talking about, and then sweeping that back to the back of the nose and then down to the throat and swallowing it. But it's, especially nowadays in our very polluted environments, that's probably, it could do with a bit of help. In the same way, I think that brushing your teeth is a little bit of help to the natural process. So this physical buildup of stuff on your teeth is just easier to remove by just physically brushing your teeth twice a day. So what I tell my patients is that I believe everybody should be doing this in the same way as everybody should brush their teeth. Everybody could do with rinsing their nose out once or twice a day with some salt water. For most people, just using a simple saline spray like Sterimar, or you can even make your own with a spray bottle and some saline from the pharmacy, or just mixed up with boiled cooled water and some salt. That's probably all most people need. If you have sinus disease or severe sinonasal problems, then maybe the jet wash version, which is the Neti Pot or the Neilmed sinus rinse or the flow, the FLO system, is probably better if you really need to get things cleaned out, especially if you've had sinus surgery. But I think for everybody, cleaning your nose once or twice a day just helps it regulate itself, removes the chemical stimulation from allergy, removes the triggers of allergy, and removes just dust and gunk and crust and things like that.
Yep. And just a word about these rinsing bottles and these cans of stuff like Sterimar. Naturally, Sterimar, something like Sterimar is great if you're traveling, but if you imagine that bottle that you pay quite a bit for has got 100 ml of water in it that gets vaporized into your nose, so maybe that's like 8 or 10 flushes. That's quite expensive. If you buy a rinse bottle, so one of a common brand is Neilmed, and there's also the Flow system. I know that every chain of pharmacies in the US, you know, CVS, Rite Aid, they all have their own versions. And then they also sell these little packets that are not just salt, but also bicarbonate of soda, or sodium bicarbonate. And I'm not quite sure why the sodium bicarbonate is in there, Simon, but it obviously serves a purpose. And you don't think so? Does it just keep...
I'm not, I mean, yes, it's in there. I'm not aware of any evidence that it makes any difference, unless it's acting to sort of maybe the pH.
Mm.
But yeah, we've always that's always been the RNT, the Royal National Threateners Neo Hospital has always had its sort of proprietary mix of alkaline nasal douche, we called it, which is essentially that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but to be honest, you can measure how much salt is in there in one of those little sachets. You can put that same amount of salt and a little pinch of very fine pinch of bicarb, and you're probably getting 90% of the same thing for a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So nasal rinsing is good to make sure you practice good hygiene with that, because you don't want to introduce, extra bacteria. It can be a faff when you start doing it. You think, ugh, I don't want to have to bother with, boiled water and all that. But once you get into a routine, and you make sure that you let your bottle dry upside down in between uses, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, there are horror stories of people infecting themselves with brain amoebae if they take it, especially US water quality being what it is. I suspect that wouldn't happen in European cities, but I don't think it's worth taking the risk.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So just boil it and cool it, and you can leave it. A day or two later is probably fine. Anything more than that is not.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's see we got more questions here, and we're running out of time. Okay.
Wouldn't be a question and answer if we didn't.
I know. Saline nose spray, we did that one. I believe I have parosmia. I'm really sorry, Liam.
There was
hang in there.
Yeah, there was a question about using albus oil somebody mentioned using albus oil for training, and we can I wanted to talk a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So albus oil is interesting in that it does have a smell, but it also stimulates the trigeminal nerve, which is another nerve in the nose that does touch. But touch is slightly more than just two things bashing together. The sense of touch comprises a sense of heat. So cold and heat have their own receptors. Pain, deep touch, and light surface touch. And this is all mediated by this nerve called the trigeminal in the nose. And albus oil stimulates the cold receptors on the trigeminal. So on one hand, and that's by the way how it makes your nose feel more open, because the way the nose tells what its airflow is like is because of the cold receptors. So there's cooling as the air flows over the mucus, and that then gives your nose the sensation of being open or not. And that's albus oil doesn't make a difference to the bore of your nose, the how wide it is. So albus oil is stimulating two things. Now that might be a good thing, in that especially if you're working in the early stages of smell loss, and I think this is why eucalyptus is often the first thing that people can smell in the Hummel 4, because it also has a little bit of trigeminal stimulation. So you're getting a signal because the nerve is a separate nerve to the one that is damaged, and it might help people to say, okay, well, I can detect something. I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to keep going with this. But don't think that is a smell. That is something mediated by a different nerve. Yeah. But I don't know what you think, Chrissi, about the trigeminal crossover. It's quite complicated, but I think
it is complicated, and I think a lot of people do think that a trigeminal sensation is evidence of smell, but of course it's not.
No.
But
petrol.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, bleach is another one.
Bleach, yeah.
But I mean, this might be a good moment, Simon, especially as we're running out of time, to segue onto the subject of smell training, which, believe it or not, we haven't really touched on. I think I think for anyone who's not familiar with it, a couple of really important messages about it. Number one, it's the only thing that we have good scientific evidence for that that we know will help improve the sense of smell, or it does, at least in most of the cases. But the very important things need to be added to that. One is that you have to do it religiously twice a day for 4 months. Like learning how to play piano to concert level, you're not going to get there if you only do it once a week. The second thing is that you don't need to have anything specific to smell train with. We recommend making a kit because that's easier. It's less cumbersome and costs less money in the long run if you make something up rather than getting out new things every day and then having to throw them away. So it's less wasteful to have a kit. But as somebody said, made a comment as was whizzing through the feed. They don't do smell training per se, but they have tuned themselves to, or trained themselves to keep asking themselves whether things smell in their environment. And really that's the important thing that you need to do, really. You've got to just keep on bringing your attention to whatever it is that might be in the environment and might have a smell. So you don't need to have specific oils. You don't need to even use essential oils. You can use things in your kitchen, but it's important that you do it a lot. So for information, videos, more webinars on this, we've got a library on YouTube now with I don't know how many videos at this point, many of which are about smell training. Do go onto YouTube and take a look at those. AbScent Anosmia Support is the name of our YouTube channel. But of course, on the website, we've got all kinds of things, links to those particular webinars, so you can find all of that in our smell training section on the website. Yeah. Right. Oh goodness, I see all kinds of people in the audience that I'm waving at. There's Aiden and Maddie is there. So let me just quickly see if there are any more. Is there a UK supplier of your training kits and yes, everything is in the UK, Camp Fury.
Funny you should mention that.
Pardon me?
Funny you should mention that, yes.
Yes, there is. You can find, as you may know, we are a charity. Everything that we sell, 100% of those proceeds go into supporting us. And I would not be here if lots and lots of people hadn't bought smell training kits during the pandemic. That's quite a story in itself, but it enabled us to get big enough to be really useful. And it is through supporting us in this way that we can help other people like you and all the other thousands of people like you and who will be in your position in the coming months as the pandemic continued. So if you buy something from us, you should feel virtuous because it's really like a donation to the cause. Now, I think on that note, Simon, I just think we're probably coming to the end.
Yeah.
I'd just like to wave to all these lovely people who've come in the last couple of minutes. So lovely to see you all. Now, a couple of other things I'd like to tell you about. We've got the AbScent Christmas quiz is happening on Tuesday. We've got some great prizes, including a free 1-hour session with me on Zoom. So, pardon?
Worth millions.
Yes. Simon, you might win, and then we can just chat.
Finally, get some time.
Yeah, so if you're interested in participating in the quiz, there will be a lot of people from the charity will be there as well, and then other people just like you will be having some fun. I'll be wearing my Christmas costume.
Oh.
And so you can find out more about the Christmas quiz in the feed at AbScent. And then the other thing I wanted you to know is please join us on our other platforms, AbScent Network, Facebook. I'm on Twitter, AbScent, at AbScent UK. So that's the same handle as you're finding here on Instagram. So I think that should pretty much cover it.
Great.
Simon, thank you.
As usual.
Wait. What did you say?
I said that was fun, as usual.
It was fun. It was fun. We'll do it again. If you've enjoyed yourself, please give us a like, follow us, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Simon. I'll be in touch soon. Okay. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Bye.